They didn't mean to start a war. It began the way most human mistakes do. Curiosity, a few brilliant minds, and one ship going where no one had gone before. The venture horizon, a deep space exploration vessel, slipped past the edge of Earth's claimed sector, chasing what they thought was a wormhole anomaly. The crew believed they were charting new territory for science, maybe discovery, but what they found was ownership. Someone already owned this part of space. The ship had only been in the system for 11 minutes before 6 silver bladder-shaped cruisers descended on them. Like wolves, no warning, no contact. Just a flash of light and the sharp tremble of shields being torn apart. There were 37 humans on board, 6 made it out alive. Their escape pod crash landed on a mining moon 3 systems away. They spent 2 weeks hiding inside a dead rock, rationing freeze-dried meals, breathing recycled air and praying Earth would pick up their emergency beacon. The ones who died weren't even killed by weapons. One suffocated when the air regulator gave out. Another took off their helmet and walked out into the void, smiling like they were finally free. Rescue came. Eventually Earth Command sent a recon ship. They picked up the survivors, took one look at the data logs, and then everything changed. For decades, Earth had believed it was alone, or at worst ignored in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Sure, there had been a few signals, anomalies even, rumors from fringe colonies, but nothing concrete, nothing confirmed. Now they knew there was an empire out there, ancient, massive, and brutal. It called itself the Zohari Dominion, and humans had wandered straight into its space. Like a child knocking on a killer's door, the Dominion didn't speak. It didn't negotiate. It only sent a message to Earth once, and it wasn't words. It was a box. Inside was the severed head of Commander Wren, the Venture Horizons captain. His mouth had been sewn shut. His eyes were burned black, and in the corner of the box, burned into metal, was a single symbol, a star being crushed by a clawed hand. Earth wept. And then Earth decided, no more running. They called it the last accord. Every country, every faction, every border dispute suspended, humanity unified in a way that hadn't happened in centuries. Not because they wanted peace, but because extinction had finally shown its face. Factories once making luxury goods were turned into weapons plants. AI research switched focus from medical to military. Colonies were evacuated and transformed into war foundries. Drones filled the sky, ships were armed, and humanity did what it does best: when pushed too far, it fought back. The first battle wasn't a victory, it was a warning. Earth sent 3 battleships to strike a Zohari listening post at the edge of their territory. Only one came back, but in the rubble they left a message burned into the asteroid: we are human, we do not forget, we do not kneel. The Zohari responded by glassing a Mars outpost. Earth responded by building the Black Echo Fleet. Now 2 years into the war, the stars were bleeding, planets had been scorched, moons shattered. The Zohari were bigger, older, and far more advanced, but they had never faced a species like humans before. A species that fought without logic, that burned its own worlds to deny the enemy, that used desperation as fuel and turned chaos into a weapon. What the Dominion didn't understand, what it still didn't see, was that humanity wasn't fighting to conquer. They were fighting to survive, and when survival is the goal, mercy disappears, sanity erode us, and every human becomes a soldier, a weapon, or a ghost. The floor vibrated constantly now, not just from the engines, but from the war itself. The Ravenclaw was a destroyer class ship, sleek, fast, and mean as hell. It wasn't made to carry thousands, it was made to kill quickly and move on, but for the past 9 days, it had become home for over 400 human soldiers, engineers, medics, and AI assistants, all cramped into narrow corridors that reek of sweat, gun oil, and burning circuits. No one slept well anymore, even in Zerog rest mode. The lights flickered too much. The recycled air smelled faintly of copper, like someone left blood in the vents. Every 20 minutes, the warning sirens would ping. Another probe detected, another false signal, another Dominion cruiser flying just far enough away to be seen but not fired on. Psychological warfare. The Zohari had perfected it. And yet humans kept fighting. Kina sat cross-legged in the maintenance bay, cleaning her rifle for the 5th time. That morning, it was already spotless, but habits helped her keep sane. The rifle was old tech, projectile-based with uranium-tipped rounds and magnetic acceleration coils that could punch holes in reinforced hull. It wasn't meant for aliens, it was meant for anything. She didn't flinch when the ship shook. Again, that was normal now. You know it's clean, right? Someone said, settling beside her. It was the comms specialist, a skinny guy with wire tattoos down his neck and burn scars across one hand. Everyone just called him Stitch. No one remembered why. I know, Kina said. Then why the hell are you still cleaning it like it's a religious ritual? Because the next time I use it, I want it to work. Stitch grinned like someone who'd stopped fearing death about 4 moons ago. Fair enough. Word is we're being deployed in 2 hours. Hit and run, Zohari. Data relay on a black moon. Just us, and 24 ghost walkers from the Saber's cry. He paused. It's going to be ugly. Everything was ugly now. Kina didn't ask more. She just nodded and continued cleaning her rifle. The silence between them felt oddly comforting, like the kind of silence people shared in cemeteries, respectful, heavy, real. 2 hours later, they were in the dropship. No windows, just red light and harness straps, the kind of ride that made your guts churn and your brain beg for distraction. Across from her sat one of the ghost walkers, a tall woman with her head shaved and black war paint under her eyes. Her armor wasn't regulation. It looked scavenged, stitched together from parts of different fallen soldiers. Trophy maybe, or just practical. In this war, nothing was wasted. Name? Kina asked, breaking the silence. The woman looked at her with cold, unreadable eyes. Doesn't matter. Fair. The dropship rocked violently, then steadied. A click followed, and the pilot's voice came through the earpiece. 30 seconds. Touchdown hot, you see. Movement, shoot. You hear breathing, shoot. You think too long, you're dead. Kina exhaled slowly and wrapped her fingers tighter around her rifle. The doors slammed open. Hell, opened with it. The moon's surface was ash black and cracked like burnt skin. Electric storms hovered in the distance, flashing red lightning across the sky. The air was barely breathable. Her helmet's HUD flickered constantly from interference, and before her boots even touched the ground, the shooting started. Zohari defense drones rose from the soil like spiders, spindly things with razor legs and energy cores that glowed green. One leapt at the first soldier out of the dropship, they didn't even scream, just vanished in a splat of blood and sparks. Kina moved fast. Low and mean, she fired 3 times. 2 missed, 1 cracked the drone's core and it exploded, spraying acid. That hissed against her armor, behind her. Stitch cursed, someone else screamed, the ghost walker beside her. Didn't fire, she just moved through the chaos like she belonged in it, slicing a drone in half with a plasma blade that hissed every time it struck metal. The team pushed forward. The target was a structure built into a crater wall. Zohari relay that looked less like a building and more like a dying insect. It pulsed with red light, organic and alive. The data inside could change the war routes, fleet positions, maybe even central command codes, or it could be a trap. Probably was, didn't matter. Orders were orders. Kina reached the outer wall first and ducked behind a slagged boulder. Her breath was ragged. Her suit was punctured, blood leaked down her ribs. She hadn't even felt it happen. Charge, someone shouted, too late to think. The explosives went off with a roar that made her teeth rattle. The relay cracked open, metal folding inward, like a can crushed by a giant hand. Smoke billowed, screams followed. Zohari weren't machines. They were a species. Elegant, spined, and cold. Their blood was silver, their eyes glowed faint blue, and they moved like dancers made of razors. Close quarters was brutal. Bullets didn't always work. You had to aim for the joint where armor met flesh, or pump enough rounds to rip them apart entirely. One of them lunged at Kina. She ducked, slid beneath its claws, and fired straight up into its chest. It shrieked, high-pitched and mechanical, and fell, twitching. Stitch went down. Kina didn't see what hit him, only that he didn't get back up. Target rooms ahead, the ghost walker shouted. They reached it. 8 left. Now, out of 20, the terminal inside was unlike anything Earth had seen. Floating panels, no wires, no keyboard. It responded to motion, light, even emotion. The ghost walker had trained for this. She moved forward, raised both hands, and the room lit up with alien glyphs. Cover me, she said. The rest formed a perimeter. More Zohari came. Not drones, soldiers, real ones. They didn't scream or shout or even talk. They just advanced. Blade rifles held like instruments, eyes glowing like dying stars. It was a bloodbath. Kina's rifle clicked empty. She grabbed a fallen soldier's sidearm and kept firing. She didn't feel her wounds anymore. Adrenaline made her a ghost with a gun, and if death came, it would have to earn it. The ghost walker finally shouted, "Download complete." Then she was shot in the throat. Kina didn't think. She grabbed the data core from the woman's twitching hand and slammed it into her own belt port. The AI inside sparked to life, whispering in her ear. Data secured. Extraction window 3 minutes. Kina ran. Only 2 others ran with her. The rest were smoke and silence. They reached the pickup zone just as another wave of drones rose from the dust. The Ravenclaw's secondary dropship hovered overhead, side guns firing, clearing a path. Kina leapt aboard, coughing blood into her helmet. The hatch slammed shut. The engines roared. They were airborne. They were alive. Barely. Back on the Ravenclaw, the captain didn't smile when they handed over the data. No celebration, just nod and a simple, "We'll see what it's worth." Kina stumbled back to her bunk. She didn't sleep. She didn't cry. She just sat there, hands still shaking. heart still thundering in her chest. And she thought about Stitch, about the Ghost Walker, about the ones who didn't make it. Humans were winning small fights, yes, but at what cost? How many more would die before the galaxy understood? Earth didn't want to conquer the stars, it just refused to be erased from them. The data core should have felt like a victory. It didn't. It sat in the middle of Earth Command's war room, a black humming cube about the size of a football floating 6 in above the steel table. It looked harmless, just another artifact from the war, but everyone in the room knew better. People had died for it, and not just people, some of Earth's best. High Admiral Trin stood at the far end of the table, arms crossed, face like carved stone. She was one of the few who had fought in space before the Zohari war. Old scars lined her neck. A lost hand had been replaced with a steel one that warred when she clenched it. She didn't trust anything easily, especially not alien tech. Is it safe? She asked, without looking at the science team. No idea, the lead technician admitted. It's broadcasting a low-frequency signal we can't trace, encrypted beyond our best AI's ability to crack it. And yet, she said slowly, we've plugged it into our network. The man hesitated. Yes, ma'am. Carefully, isolated servers, no access to main systems. Trin didn't like that answer, but she didn't have time to scold. There was something inside the data core, something worth all those Zohari troops dying to protect it. They didn't throw soldiers away, not like humans. If they bled for it, it mattered. A soft chime broke the silence. The core flickered. Then it spoke. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even Zohari. It was something else, lower, older, echoing like it had been recorded in the bones of a dying star. You have trespassed into sacred memory. Everyone froze. The technician swallowed hard. It's communicating in galactic common, auto-rating itself. The cube glowed brighter. This is Archive 9. You are not Zohari. You are not authorized. Still, you have claimed blood price. Protocol permits partial access. Trin stepped forward. Show us what's inside. The lights dimmed. The cube spun, then projected a holographic map into the air. It stretched from one side of the room to the other. Entire galaxies displayed like dust on black glass. Earth's sector was a tiny flicker near the edge of a spiral arm, and near the center of it all was a black hole. Not natural, perfectly circular, artificial, a ring. No one spoke. The voice continued. The Zohari Dominion is not the first, not the greatest. They are children playing with the weapons of gods. Before them came the Forge Singers. Before them the Sky Cutters. Before them us. Trin stared at the map. What is this? The technician whispered. History, real galactic history. The voice didn't stop. The ring is called Oblivion's Cradle. It was built not to destroy, but to contain. You call them Zohari now, but their kind was once worse. Not rulers, not conquerors, devourers. The map zoomed in. What looked like a star system unfolded, except the star at the center wasn't a star. It was black and chained, energy tendrils wrapped around it, anchors pierced into planets, moons orbiting like watchtowers. They were imprisoned, broken, caged by ancient ones who could not kill them. The Dominion is their rebirth, their fragments. They do not rule the galaxy. Because they are strongest, they rule. Because everything stronger is already dead. Trin's voice was hard. You're saying that Zohari are parasites. No, the cube replied, they are the infection that survived the cure. The lights flickered again, then the hologram shut off. The room was silent for a long time. Then Trin spoke what everyone was thinking. We thought we were fighting an empire. We're fighting a disease. Far away, on the edge of disputed space, Kina leaned against the cold hull of the observation deck, watching stars drift by. She hadn't told anyone yet, but something strange had happened during the last mission, when she'd plugged the core into her suit. Just for those few seconds, she'd seen something, a flash of memories that weren't hers. White planet with towers that bent. Light, a voice calling her name in a language she didn't understand. And the sense, no, the certainty that someone had noticed her, not just the Zohari, something older she hadn't told. The medics, they'd scan her brain and lock her down for contamination. Instead, she waited. For what, she didn't know. A few hours later, the captain summoned her to the command deck. Kina, you're being reassigned, she blinked. What? Why? Because you're carrying something the core left behind, a resonance. The text can't explain it, neither can command. But it responded to you and no one else. Kina didn't know what to say. I'm not special. That's not your choice to make anymore. She was transferred off the Ravenclaw. Within the hour, the new ship was smaller, sleeker, no visible weapons. It didn't even have a name on the side. Just a serial number burned into its hull. The soldiers aboard didn't talk. Their armor was different, heavier, no markings. It wasn't a military ship. It was a retrieval vessel, and it was headed straight for the Black Ring. The journey took 12 days. Kina wasn't allowed near the bridge. She wasn't told the plan. But she knew enough. Earth Command had taken the Corps' warning seriously. They wanted to see the prison with their own eyes, and they needed someone the Corps had touched. The moment they dropped out of FTL, Ken's breath caught in her throat. There it was, Oblivion's cradle. It stretched across half the sky, so big it looked fake, a perfect ring around a dead star with tendrils of energy looping through it like arteries. There was nothing else nearby, no planets, no debris, just the silence of something very old and very dangerous. She could feel it in her bones, in her blood, in her thoughts. The lead scientist aboard the retrieval ship, a thin woman with red lenses over her eyes, approached her. You're going down there, she said, to the ring too. The gate inside it, there's a vault. Sealed, locked with a pattern we can't break. But the Corps says your presence might be the key. Why me? Because something inside noticed you and you noticed it back. Kina suited up. The drop pod was silent, smooth and terrifying. No guns, no escort. Just her and a pressure chamber, descending into the most dangerous place in known space. As the pod entered the ring's atmosphere, her hoodie scrambled. Lights flickered, gravity twisted, and then everything went still. The gate stood before her, 20 stories high, made of black stone and humming metal. Symbols crawled across it like living things. She stepped forward and the gate opened, not with a sound but with a thought. Inside was not what she expected. It was warm, alive. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat. Light came from nowhere, yet everything was visible. She moved slowly, rifle in hand, but nothing attacked, nothing moved. Then she saw it, a body not human, not Zohari, tall, thin, with silver skin and eyes like frozen suns. It was dead but not decayed, and in its hands was a crystal the size of her head floating above its palm. As she approached, her helmet AI whispered, "Caution, unknown energy detected. Resonance match confirmed. This is what the core meant to find." She reached out and the crystal shattered. A wave of energy hit her like thunder underwater. She screamed, but no sound came. Visions rushed through her, stars dying, planets burning, creatures bigger than moons fighting in silence, and voices whispering in languages older than light. Then she saw Earth burning, not in the past, not in the future. Now the vision vanished. Kina dropped to her knees, gasping, and for the first time since the war began, she was truly afraid, not of death, but of what she had just awakened. Kina didn't remember how she got back to the drop pod. One moment she was inside the vault, staring at the shattered remains of the crystal. The next, she was slumped against the cold steel wall of the pod, helmet cracked, blood dried around her nose and ears. Her suit's AI kept repeating the same line over and over: cognitive overload detected, neural damage risk at 83%, seek immediate medical intervention. But there were no medics, no voice on comms, nothing. When she finally managed to sit up, the pod was moving, ascending back toward the ship. The world outside the small viewport was warped and hazy like heat waves over metal. And the ring was no longer dormant. It was glowing. Lines of red energy flowed along its inner walls, pulsing toward the dead star at the center. Lightning cracked through the vacuum of space, slicing in silence across the darkness. Something had been sleeping, and now it was beginning to stir. Kina stared in horror. "You touched the core," she whispered to herself, "and now it's waking up." Back aboard the ship, alarms blared. Before the pod even docked, "Get her out," someone shouted. The airlock hissed open and masked technicians dragged her from the pod, cutting her suit open and slapping a neural patch to her temple. White-hot pain exploded through her skull. Her vision went black. When she woke, she was strapped to a medbed, eyes covered, machines humming all around her. A familiar voice spoke from the left side. "You're lucky to be alive." Kina turned her head weakly. It was the red-lensed scientist again. No emotion in her voice, no comfort. "I'm not feeling lucky," Kina muttered, throat dry. "You shouldn't be. Whatever you touched down there wasn't meant for us, but you opened it." Kina's eyes adjusted to the light as the visor was lifted. The scientist leaned in. "Tell me everything. What did you see?" Kina paused. She remembered it too clearly. It wasn't a dream. It was a download, a memory, or a warning. There were voices, not so hard, older. "I saw machines the size of planets breaking stars like glass. I saw something chained inside the dead star, screaming without a mouth in Earth, our world, burning in a storm of black fire, not bombed, consumed." The scientist didn't blink. "We've been monitoring energy output from the ring since your activation. It's rising. All systems are aligning toward the center. The dead star isn't dead." Kina's stomach dropped. "You think it's coming alive? We think something inside it never died." News reached Earth Command 3 hours later. The ring was sending out pulses, coded signals in ancient frequencies spanning across galaxies. They weren't messages. They were beacons, warnings, or worse, summons. Earth's top minds tried to crack the signals. They weren't just Language, they were emotion, memory. Pain designed to be felt, not read. AI couldn't process it, only a few humans could even stay conscious while listening. Kina was one of them, so they flew her back. This time she wasn't just a soldier. She was the key. Back on Earth, the skies looked the same, but the world had shifted. Cities were on high alert. The moon had been turned into a weaponized monitoring base. Orbit was full of carriers, battleships, satellites. Earth knew it couldn't win the war with numbers, but it could delay the end with firepower. Kina met High Admiral Trin in person. This time, the woman didn't look shocked by any of what she'd heard, just tired, like someone who'd been preparing for this war long before it ever started. I need you to hear something, Trin said. Without greeting, she handed Kina a small earpiece. This is what the ring sent. We filtered it through the same code the Corps used when it first spoke to us. Kina hesitated, then slipped the earpiece in. The sound that followed wasn't sound at all, it was feeling. Grief, rage, hunger, a cold, aching loneliness that reached past her thoughts and wrapped around the back of her soul. For a second she thought she was drowning. Her chest tightened, her eyes watered, and then it whispered, "They tried to bury us, but stars remember." Kina tore the earpiece out. Trin's face didn't change. "You heard it. It's alive," Kina whispered, "and it hates everything." Trin nodded. "We think the Zohari were created by it, not in labs, not like slaves, but as fragments, pieces like fingers stretching out after being chained." "They're not its army," Kina said, realization sinking in. "They're its infection spreading through the galaxy, making everything ready." Yes, the war had never been about territory. It wasn't about politics or power or even survival. It was about release. The Zohari weren't fighting for control. They were clearing the galaxy, sterilizing it, getting it ready for the return of whatever was buried at the heart of Oblivion's cradle. And Earth had woken it up. That night Trin held a secret council, not politicians, not generals, survivors, people who had seen the enemy with their own eyes and still came back breathing. Kina was there, so were 3 ship captains, a pilot with one arm, and a scientist who'd gone blind trying to decipher Zohari runes. "We need to strike first," Trin said. "With what?" someone scoffed. "We throw nukes at that ring. It'll laugh." "We don't nuke it," she replied. "We break the chains, the ones holding it back." Heads turned, confused, alarmed. "You want to free it?" Kina asked. "Are you insane?" "No," Trin said calmly. "I want to control it." "You think that's better?" "I think it's our only shot." There was silence. Then the blind scientist spoke. "I've been studying Zohari neural code. It's not biology. It's a signal, a command line. They're all linked like a hive, but not to each other, to a source." "The cradle," Trin said. "We hijack it." The scientist said. "Feed it new instructions." "Impossible," someone said. "Maybe, but the girls already touched it." The Corps responded to her. "So will the cradle." Kina stood slowly. "So I become what? A virus?" "No," Trin said. "You become the override." They built the device in 6 days. It was called the Heartbreaker, a neural feedback system wired directly into a human brain. It didn't send code. It sent thought, memory, will. If it worked, it would let Kina speak directly to the mind beneath the ring, not in language and emotion. They knew the risk. If it failed, her mind would burn. If it worked, it might still kill her. But Kina didn't flinch. She strapped herself in. Wires were inserted into her spine, her skull, her veins. Every heartbeat pulsed through the system. Every thought echoed in the device. The last thing she saw before blacking out was Earth spinning quietly below her. In space, she wondered if she'd ever see it again. Inside the system, there were no walls, no floor, no sky, just consciousness. She was drifting through memories that weren't hers, civilizations rising, civilizations falling, stars being born and dying. She saw creatures made of light, worlds sculpted by will alone. And at the center of it all, the chained one. It saw her, it knew her. Little fire, it whispered, why do you knock? I came to stop you, Kina said. It laughed, a sound like collapsing mountains. You woke me, you opened the wounds, now bleed. Kina focused. She pushed every memory she had into the system. Stitches last laugh, the smell of burned ships, the taste of blood and hope and fear. She pushed humanity's grief, its love, its rage, and for a second it hesitated. So much pain, it whispered. Yes, she said, we carry it, and we keep going. Why? Because we choose to. That's what makes us human. The voice trembled. I was not always this. I was betrayed, broken, left to rot. They built my chains from sorrow. I have only hunger. Now you can still stop, Kina said. Or you can burn everything. You would forgive me? No, Kina said softly, but I would understand. Silence, then a shudder. The ring stopped glowing across space. Zohari. Ships froze, power systems collapsed. Hives screamed. Something was dying, but not in pain, in peace. Ka's body collapsed as the system shut down. Heart flatlined, but just before the black took her, she heard the last words from the thing that had haunted the galaxy for ages. Then let me sleep again with the stars. Kina was clinically dead for 12 minutes. Long enough for the crew to start preparing her file, long enough for command to receive a coded report of heroic loss of asset, long enough for the red lens scientist to say, I told you this would kill her. But then she breathed. No warning, no jump start, no electric jolt, just breath. Her chest rose, her fingers twitched, and her eyes opened, except they weren't the same eyes, not entirely. Where once there was a sharp human stare, now her gaze carried depth, like she'd stared into something ancient, and it had stared back, and neither of them had looked away. The med team froze. She sat up slow, like her bones remembered another gravity. Don't touch me, she said softly when the doctors approached. Her voice was still hers, but lower, worn. She looked around the medbay and whispered, it's quiet. What is? The lead medic asked, checking her vitals. The stars, she said, they've stopped screaming across the galaxy. Zohari systems began to fail. Ships drifted out of formation. AI cores collapsed. Planetary governors, those tall, spike-clad beings who issued commands in silence, stood still in the streets of their colonies and then crumbled into ash. Earth didn't strike them, didn't need to. The infection that ran the Zohari had been cut off like puppets whose strings were suddenly burned away. Humanity didn't celebrate, not yet. Too many had died, too many were still scattered, holding the line, not knowing the war had changed shape overnight. Instead, Earth Command issued a quiet code across all channels, phase black, complete, awaiting confirmation. No one knew what confirmation meant. No one but Kina. She walked through the command deck of the Oberon, the newest flagship in the Human fleet, wearing a thin gray uniform. And bare feet, no weapons, no armor. Nothing that made her look like a soldier, but everyone moved out of her way. Her presence was heavy, not frightening, not divine, just impossible to ignore, like gravity had decided to follow her and her alone. Admiral Train met her in the center hall. She looked smaller somehow now. Not physically, but in presence, like she understood something had shifted permanently. I heard you're awake, Trin said. I never really left, Kina replied. You stopped it, Kina nodded once, and the Zohari disconnected. Their link was severed. They'll rot now, some might even survive, but they'll be lost without a mind to guide them. Trin folded her arms. Then we've won. No, Kina said gently, we've paused the end. That's different. Trin didn't like that answer. You don't believe it's over? Kina looked out through the glass wall, toward the black streak in space where Oblivion's cradle used to burn. It had gone dark, but not dead, dormant again. Like a tired god given permission to sleep. It's never over, she said. Just quieter until the next one wakes up. The Earth Alliance met in person. For the first time in 15 years. Representatives from all major nations, colonies and corporate factions, gathered in the Unity Ring, a floating city built between the Earth and Moon. Place originally meant for economic cooperation. Now it served as a war council chamber. Kina was not invited. She showed up anyway. They made space for her without asking. The room was full of nervous power, men and women who had climbed to influence, not because of charisma, but because they knew how to survive war. And yet, as Kina walked to the center, none of them interrupted. She didn't ask for the floor, she just began speaking. You've all read the reports, she said. You've seen the data. The Zohari are collapsing, their fleets scattered, their systems shutting down. We now control more space than ever before in human history. Someone clapped. She ignored it. But this isn't a victory, she continued. It's a warning. What we called the Dominion was only a symptom. The real threat was the source, and we woke it up. Murmurs passed through the room. I made contact, she said. I stopped it for now. Not because I beat it, but because it let me speak. It listened, that's all. Senator stood. You're saying it could come back. I'm saying it will, Kina replied. Not tomorrow, maybe not in our lifetime, but it exists and it remembers. Another voice. So what do we do? Prepare, Kina said. We stop looking at this galaxy as ours to conquer and start seeing it as a field of graves, some old, some still warm. Whatever came before us fell. The Zohari were survivors of something worse. We're just the next ones to walk into the fire. Someone laughed nervously. That's a hell of a speech, soldier. Kina looked at him. I'm not a soldier anymore. Then what are you? She paused, then answered. A bridge. The weeks that followed were strange. Humanity began expanding, not with arrogance, but with awareness. Every new world was scanned, not just for minerals or life, but for memory, for traces of the war that came long before their own. Some planets whispered, others screamed. In deep space, they found relics buried under frozen oceans. On an asteroid near Giza, a drifting ruin broadcasted a looped signal no machine could translate, and on one moon they found a city made of bones, not alien, not human, but something in between. Kina visited them all, not as a warrior, but as something else. Each time the relics responded, doors opened, machines came To life symbols shifted. She didn't speak their language, but they recognized her, the woman who had spoken to the chained god. One day she disappeared. No transport logs, no shuttles missing, just gone. Some said she stepped through a gate that hadn't existed the day before. Others believed she burned herself out, keeping the ancient intelligence at rest. Some even whispered she was never really human in the first place, that the core had rewritten her, made her its voice. None of the stories could be proven. What mattered was this: the war was over and Earth had survived. But humanity was not the same. They now knew the stars were older, stranger, and crueler than they'd ever imagined. They knew peace was temporary, and they knew that if the dark came calling again, they'd have to answer, not with fear, but with fire. In the void beyond systems, in a place where light refused to travel, something shifted. A dream stirred, a memory stretched, and a voice whispered once more, "Little fire, I remember you." The galaxy called it peace, but Earth didn't. Not really. What followed Ken's disappearance wasn't the silence of peace, it was the static before the next transmission. Calm, but full of tension, the kind of calm that made soldiers clean weapons they didn't plan to use, and politicians whisper behind closed doors. Everyone knew the war had ended strangely, not with surrender, not with treaties, but with collapse. The Zohari were done. Their fleets were now derelict shells, scattered across 1,000 systems. Their colonies sat empty, eerie, like someone had erased the minds of an entire species overnight. Nothing grew, nothing functioned, and in the dark, parts of their abandoned cities, sometimes machines still blinked, like ghosts still trying to obey a master that was no longer listening. Earth had won. Yes, but they'd never fired the final shot. That made people nervous. 2 years after the last Zohari stronghold went dark, a new organization formed, the Frontier Memory Commission. Its mission was simple: catalog everything alien, everything old, every fragment of the past that might explain what Kina saw or what lived inside the ring. No more treating relics as weapons or trophies. Now they were clues, warnings left by civilizations that had died long before Earth even invented fire. The Commission's lead base was built on a planet called Aryan 3, once a Zohari outpost, now a human excavation site, surrounded by massive black spires, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly. Under moonlight, the atmosphere was thin, but breathable. The planet was quiet. Too quiet. Researchers said the ground remembered things. They weren't joking. When you stood too long outside the safety domes, you could hear whispers, not words, just impressions, regret, grief, screams smothered by time. They said it was echo radiation, old psychic tech from a forgotten empire. Some believed that, others didn't. One of them was Kalen Rowe, a historian who'd survived the siege of Proxima Station. During the war, he'd been a teacher before the first shot was fired. Now he was something else, less of a scholar, more of a gravedigger, the kind who read messages carved into weapons and ruins instead of books. He didn't believe the whispers were tech. He believed they were memories, and Aryan 3 was full of them. Kalen's tent was small, lined with scanners, sketches, and strings of notes, pinned with magnets to every surface. He hadn't slept in 2 days, not since they uncovered the door. It was buried under 40 m of rock, sealed with Zohari glyphs. But the Zohari didn't build it. They just locked it. He stared at the panel. For hours. Touch activated. 5 symbols, only 4 lit up when he tried. The 5th was missing. Wiped. He tried language matches. Failed. Tried emotion-based recognition. Nothing. Then he tried something new. He touched the panel and whispered one name, Ka, and the door opened. Not with a sound, not with light. It simply wasn't closed anymore. Inside was a hall of mirrors, not reflective ones, just smooth black walls that shimmered with shifting images. Galaxies spinning backward. Beings with wings made of smoke, suns birthing. Cities that lived for 10 minutes and died with their creators inside. Kalen walked slowly, recorder on heart racing, and at the end of the hall, something waited, a chair, simple metal, centered beneath a pillar of light, and sitting in it, silent, was a human body. Female, alive, eyes closed, heart beating. They evacuated the entire site within the hour. The Frontier Commission called it protocol null when any structure displays prehuman design but contains a human subject. There had been protocols. There had never been a case until now. They moved her to a containment chamber. She didn't resist, didn't wake, didn't move, just sat, breathing, heart rate slow and steady, no signs of decay, no malnutrition, no aging. DNA confirmed. Within 6 hours, Kina Rail, they called Admiral Trin out of retirement. She didn't argue, didn't even ask why. When she arrived, she entered the chamber alone, sat across from the girl who disappeared into myth, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then Kina opened her eyes. She didn't blink, didn't stretch. Just said softly, "Hello, Admiral." Trin swallowed. "You've been gone 2 years. I haven't." Kina said. For me, it was a moment. Where were you? Kina looked at the ceiling. Everywhere, nowhere, somewhere. Between breath and fire, you vanished. Without a trace, I was carried, Kina said, by something old. It didn't want me to die, it wanted me to learn. Learn what? That nothing we've seen so far was the beginning, Kina whispered. The war. We fought with the Zohari, that was clean up, leftover instinct, a broken system still running. The last command it received before being buried. Trent leaned forward. What's coming? Kina looked at her then, eyes glowing faintly, unnaturally. Something hungry. The Memory Commission fell under military authority within a week. 2 many things were happening. 2 more Kina vaults were discovered, each holding a different object. One, a seed made of liquid metal that sang when touched. The other, a sphere that showed you a future you couldn't explain and wouldn't remember afterward. And the stars started shifting. Satellites across deep space lines began detecting gravitational distortions in systems that had been silent for thousands of years. Entire moons moving half an inch every 3 days, orbit patterns showing stress from invisible forces. Something was stirring, something big. Kina wasn't confined. She didn't need to be. She remained on Arian 3 by choice, studying ruins, translating pulses, the walls that only she could hear. Kalen joined her. Together they found the patterns. The symbols weren't just language, they were instructions, codes for building, maps for movement, warnings, triggers. This isn't a vault, Kalen said one night, half drunk on synthetic whiskey. It's a factory, Kina nodded. A seed ship. A what? She pointed toward the stars. It builds from memory. Whatever species left this behind didn't trust the galaxy to survive them, so they buried instructions inside worlds tied to specific bloodlines or events. Fail, Safed and us were either the answer, Kina said, quietly, or the final mistake. Months passed, Kina grew stranger. She didn't sleep, didn't eat often, but her strength never faded. Sometimes she'd stand in the ruins for hours, eyes closed, arms raised, listening, and then she'd write something down, a phrase, a number, a star name, an Earth command. Would follow it and they would find something, old warships made of bone and gold, libraries stored in black sand. One time, a creature inside a crystal. Still alive, still dreaming. She was a compass now, but even compasses can be broken. One night Kaelin found her shaking, not from fear, from rage. I saw it, she whispered, the one that's coming. He didn't ask how. It eats light, she said, not as fuel, as memory. It erases. It forgets things until even the stars don't know they ever existed. Kaelin stared. It's not part of the Zohari, she said. It's what the Zohari were built to stop. Once, a long time ago, a fail-safe, jailer, Kina said, but they failed. It got loose and it's coming back. How much time do we have? She looked at him. Enough to make a choice. What kind of choice? To become something more than human. The stars were shaking, not from war, not from weapons, from something deeper, something that didn't belong in this galaxy or any other. Something that moved behind reality, brushing against time like fingers against frost-covered glass. They called it the Unmaking. That was the name, Kina whispered when she finally stood in front of the assembled Earth Coalition. She didn't need introductions anymore. The politicians, the generals, the scientists, they all fell silent when she entered. Some feared her, some worshipped her. None understood her, but all of them listened. It doesn't want to rule us, Kina said, her voice quiet but firm. It doesn't want to destroy our cities or enslave our people. She looked around the silent chamber. It wants to erase the idea that we ever existed. A low breath rippled through the room. It is not a god, it is not a species, it is a concept, a cosmic correction, triggered when too many broken systems remain unchecked. The ancients built machines to contain it. The Zohari were part of that, but they failed. They turned into an infection instead of a cure. Kina stepped closer. We are the last chance to stop it. How? Someone finally asked. She paused and then said the words they'd all been dreading. We don't stop it as we are. Earth had long resisted the idea of post-humanity. Genetic enhancements, AI symbiosis, mind networking, all of it had been studied, but never widely accepted. Fear held the species back, but now fear wasn't a wall anymore, it was fuel. Kina stood at the edge of science and memory, holding keys that weren't invented but inherited. She unlocked old machines buried in dead moons, revived blueprints that existed only in the thoughts of ancient builders, and she built a path, not a weapon, not a fleet, but a bridge. A way to link human thought into something bigger, shared across distance, emotion, memory. They called it the Covenant Core. It looked like a seed, but when activated it would connect every human who chose to step forward, not through language, through being unity, not by order but by memory, by choice. Kina stood before the activation chamber. As thousands gathered, some soldiers, some scientists, some orphans who had seen war from beneath rubble. She raised her hand. This is not salvation, she said, it's sacrifice. We We'll lose something of ourselves, but we will gain something else, something we need to face what's coming. She turned, placing her palm on the core. The light spread like blood in water, and humanity changed across the galaxy. Those who joined the covenant felt it, not pain, not invasion, just belonging. They saw through each other's eyes, felt the weight of every soldier lost, every child orphaned, every star burned, and with that came clarity. They were no longer individuals on the edge of extinction. They were a single species, choosing to survive. The unmaking came 3 days later. It didn't arrive in a ship. It arrived everywhere at once, a black shimmer behind the edges of space, unraveling gravity, memory, and light itself. Stars flickered, planets forgot their names, whole moons turned inside out, but the covenant held. Kina led the first strike, not with guns but with memory, weapons crafted from ancient tech, thought blades, emotion lances, devices that projected not matter but pain, hope, rage, the raw essence of a species that had refused to kneel. The unmaking blinked. It noticed, and for the first time in uncounted ages, it hesitated. The final battle didn't take place in space. It took place between realities, where thought and time twisted like wires in a storm. Covenant ships weren't metal anymore. They were will. Kina piloted the first one herself, a shape woven from her mind, trailing fragments of who she was, the laughter of Stitch, the fury of old battlefields, the quiet of Arian 3. The unmaking fought back, not with weapons, with forgetting. It unspooled human thought, turned conviction into confusion, made pilots forget what they were doing mid-breath. Whole battalions collapsed into silence. But Kina pushed forward, and as she did, others followed. They remembered, and their memory was louder than the void. At the heart of the storm, Kina stood before the source. It wasn't a shape, it was an absence, a hole in reality that sucked in meaning, hope, history. She opened herself, she gave it everything, not just data, not just resistance. She gave it stories. Girl who lost her father when Earth's first station was destroyed, the old man who refused to leave a burning moon because his wife's grave was there, the mechanic who taught a Zohari defector how to laugh before dying in orbit. She gave it humanity, the messy, stubborn, beautiful thing it was trying to erase. And the void paused. For a second, the darkness remembered. And in that breath, Kina shattered it. The unmaking didn't explode, it faded. Not from power, but from understanding. It could erase data, but it couldn't erase grief, couldn't unwrite love, and it couldn't survive being seen, truly, deeply seen by a mind that refused to forget. Kina never came back. Not physically, her body was gone, lost in the place where reality had cracked. But she remained. In the covenant, in the thoughts of every person connected. She was not a god, she was not a savior, she was memory, and that was enough. 100 years later, a child on a distant colony asked her grandmother why Earth's flag bore a black ring at the center. The old woman smiled, because once a girl walked into the dark, and then what? She made it remember the